It's starting. Hello, everybody. This is Chris Strickland, and this is the second episode of our mine and Chrystal Lynn series of astrology and different topics. First, we did mental health. Now we're going to focus on one of Crystal's, what she is really good at, what she's studied very hard on over the years, religion and how it plays into astrology. And I'm going to take a back seat on this because I've always backed away from religion, and I honestly cannot tell you the stories and everything, but Chrystal is great at it. So we're going to get started with this, and I'm basically just going to be interviewing Chrystal. So say hello, Chrystal.
Hello, everyone. Chrystal Lynn. This is so cool to have this opportunity. Chris and I kind of do these laid back videos, so we have a good time. We talk all the time anyway, so it's like, right? These are different topics. So we're finally putting them together, these conversations that we've been having. So
yeah, and it feels like destiny. It feels like it's meant to be out there. So, and this topic, I think, is just going to blow everybody's mind. And I think, yeah, this topic is just going to blow people's minds because everybody is so confused about religion and what path they should take and what they should believe in. Like, you could call astrology a religion. I don't think it's a religion. I think it's just a spiritual way of life. And, with astrology, you could go by the Placidus chart, you could go by the equal charts, you have your options. But with religion, it's kind of like set in stone, and there's a lot of contradictions in the Bible, which I want to bring up later on. But yeah.
Yeah, no, those are, you're right. Everybody is having all of these questions, and especially my generation, those born in the Pluto and Virgo generation, were the opposite of the Neptune and Pisces generation. Okay. We were born, for those of you out there, in the 60s during the Jesus movement, during the Summer of Love in 1969. This was the time when, the hippie movement was happening and everybody was coming out where there was no rules. Instead of going to church in your best dress, people were going into the church barefoot, in sandals, and there was no rules. They were freeing up to have this completely, born again experience. It was a very big high that drew people in, and it took, it's taken us to where we are now. When we get into this subject, there's so many different things we can talk about. So
right. It's so hard to find where to jump into, but where I want to jump into is the age of Pisces. Because I think a lot of people are confused as to, oh my God, am I doing something wrong? Am I breaking tradition? But people need to understand that we are transiting into the age of Aquarius, and technology and everything that has to do with the Aquarius is, coming forward. And Jesus even says in the Bible, I will be with you until the end of the eon. Well, end of age. Eon means age. And you will follow a man bearing a pitcher of water, Aquarius. Right. So it's all astrological.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I think we could definitely agree that we are absolutely seeing all the signs that everybody's been talking about there. We're at this critical stage. So let's talk about, let me just give kind of a general picture of what I've been studying. I was raised a very devout Christian, very involved, and knew the Bible. I did apologetics, where I studied other religions. I used to do debates. And being that I have a moon in Pisces and an ascendant, it just makes sense that I love Jesus.
Moon in the 12th house in Pisces.
Yeah, and my 12th house. So the study of the pursuit of faith, or having a very spiritual experience throughout my whole entire life, has been something that's come to me, not anything I ever had to search out, if that makes sense. Some people have to really search to find faith or religion, something that they do as a study. But for many of us, especially us Pisces out there, it's like this whole universe from the other side of heaven just opens up to us.
Right.
But you have to understand that we have been in the age of Pisces the last.
Right. And I just want to say that, you know, the age of Pisces, like we were talking about earlier, you know, the sacrifice thing. And I look at it as, you know, for me, it was a very scary period from what I saw of it, because the rules, you know, and now that we're moving into the age of Aquarius, people are kind of taking on their own kingdom.
Mm-hmm.
Their own, like, you know, we are the gods. We make the decisions. We, you know, everything Aquarius. And
well, there's an equality. If you even look at what's happening between all of, you know, male, female identities, all of these issues is very Aquarian. It's saying we're all on the same playing field.
Right.
And
Like, you know, even the transgender and the people, you know, getting upset about, you know, don't assume I'm this gender, you know, this is all Aquarius stuff.
Yes.
Out of this world stuff.
Yes. Well, let me give you just a little bit of a look back during the Old Testament. If we just go back that far, for many of you, you have concept of the Old Testament. That was during the age of Aries. Okay, remember the ages go backwards; they don't go forward. So during that 2,000-year period, we have Moses. We have Moses with the ram's horn, Aries. Okay, we have eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. We have, you have to follow this legalistic law to be right with God, very legalistic. So people were able to have a very self-righteousness, because it's like, if I can follow the law better than you, then I'm better than you.
Right.
But it doesn't mean, but then at the same time, there's no way to judge the heart.
Yes.
Because anybody can be more legalistic but have not a good heart.
Right.
Okay. And during that time, the only way to make atonement for, quote unquote, the sin was to shed blood. Blood had to be shed, and that's why they would sacrifice the lamb. Okay. Now remember, I'm talking about this stuff as an astrological concept in history. I'm not here today to tell anyone what to believe or how to believe, because my beliefs are always changing as well right now with all of these different awareness.
Well, I'm trying to persuade people not to believe in the old ways, because we are not moving backwards, we're moving forward.
What you have to remember, though, is that these concepts, it's imprinted in our DNA, those of us born in this 2,000-year period of Pisces, and I'll jump onto that. It's within us. It's inbred in us. And so there's a lot of guilt and a lot of shame and a lot of these concepts that we don't even know where they came from. And now that we're moving into this new age, so many people are confused because they want to let go of that old
the outdated religions.
Well, it had its purpose for that time, and exactly, it's moving into a different age. Now, when we moved from the age of Aries into the age of Pisces, That's when we moved into the last 2,000-year period of the New Testament and of the coming of Jesus, okay, the first coming of Jesus, where he was born. Now remember, we go from Aries, which is like this king. It's everybody was trying to fight for the top dog position.
Uh-huh.
You know what I mean? When you look back in all the old stories, it's very brutal when you look into the Old Testament, okay, very brutal. But when you move now into the New Testament, when Jesus came, it was like this humble king now. We have this empath. We have this baby born in a manger. I mean, basically a barn, you know, where there was, you know, horse poop, cow poop. It wasn't, you know, we look at the little mangers at Christmas, but no, this was like a stinky barn.
Yeah.
And one of the interesting things about this period, many of us know, is that there was the three wise men that followed the star. We can get into a whole astrological conversation on the day that Jesus was born and what was happening. But we're talking about the story here, that there was a search. Now, back in those days, you know, when you had, I believe it was like Caesar at that time, there was many of them, but that particular one wanted to know the time of birth that Jesus was born.
Mm-hmm.
Why did he want to know the time of birth? We know that's because he was looking for his ascendant, and he wanted to know if he was really the king everybody was talking about, because it was a threat to him. Is this baby being born? Nobody told him what the time of birth was. The wise men, the astrologers, secretly went to him. They knew the time.
That's very interesting.
Very interesting, because a lot of people think, you know, we've been made to believe that astrology is from the devil, from Satan. It's, you know, all these things that have nothing to do. Astrology, at least in my opinion, is a language. It's a language. It's also a way, especially back in those days when they didn't have TV and, you know, all these ways to find out what the weather was and the best crop. Their whole life was the language of astrology. You know, they knew when that particular Mars planet came in, we have a war. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They knew that that planet meant war. Uh-oh. They knew that this planet meant crops and a good time. They knew how to follow all of that. So it makes sense that we have in this nativity these three wise men. They were astrologers. They were looking for finding the time of the time that Jesus was born. Mm-hmm. Now, the king at that time did not get that information. So you know what he did? He killed all the babies, firstborn baby boys during that time. He sent out basically to kill them all so that that king would not rise. And wow. That's when they took Jesus and they went to Bethlehem and they hid him because they, you know, they didn't have the time. So now we have this understanding that astrology, if you look through the whole entire Bible, you will see the cycles. You'll see the 7-year periods, you know, the 40 days and the 40 nights, the cycles of Venus. Mm-hmm. You know, there was times even in the Old Testament that there would be 7 years of famine and 7 years of abundance. Those were Uranus cycles. Okay, haven't we all just come out of 7 years of famine? Yeah, in a sense, we've all been struggling.
In the Taurus now.
Because it was about our identity. We had to get, the last 7 years, we had to have our identity before we could have our money. Without your identity, you don't know how to handle money, you know, if you don't use it.
A lot of sense, yeah.
And now we're moving into Uranus moving into Taurus, where we're going to finally be able to plant and to finally, you know, really have some abundance coming back to us. But all through the Bible. So the thing that I want to talk about is the last 100 years, we've been moving into what many people talk about as New Age, where you're your own God, right? You no longer need to sacrifice anything. That almost seems weird.
Yeah.
But if you think about the religions of the last 2,000 years, and I'm talking all religions as far as, you know, the Christianity, there's many different types of ways that this has been interpreted. Mm-hmm. To say which way is the true way really isn't what matters. The fact is It's a pathology. It's a psychological way we've all been living. And what we've basically been living is a way that if you sacrifice your life, if you serve others and not put yourself first, you are acting as if Jesus did, because he sacrificed his life, right, on the cross. And so you can be right with God and you live, you know, what would Jesus do? Okay. Here's the problem though. This is also where we see, and I'm just speaking in general terms, the narcissist and the empath.
Right.
Now, why I say this is because they have a relationship. There's a cycle here. Many of the church leaders, when you look at the church, play out this almost narcissistic behavior. People come into these churches. Why do they get hooked in? Why do they follow? Because they get love bombed. The first thing that happens when you walk into church is you have the greeters. And if you get down on your hands and knees and you take their Bible and you start tithing, they are going to love bomb the heck out of you for a while, aren't they?
Yeah.
Right? And so how are these people?
I told you earlier, I had some Mormons visit me the other day, ironically, and they really made me question the subject. So that kind of inspired me for us to talk about this. And you were telling me earlier, you know, the Mormons and the Jehovah's Witnesses and the Scientology, you know, we're kind of delusional.
Well, yes, and thanks for bringing that, because I wrote a couple things down. I don't have all my lights on in here because I like the whole mysterious thing.
I can see you.
But okay, the last cycle of Neptune and Pisces back in 1852, 62, in that time period. Okay, Joseph Smith was born. He was the founder of the Mormon Church. Now, if you understand his initial, basically burning bush moment that he spoke to God. He was 14-year-old boy.
14 years old.
Out in the desert. Okay. What happens with the 14-year-old boy out in the desert looking up in the skies? They're going to have delusions. They're going to be
Doesn't the Bible say if an angel of light comes to you and portrays themselves as Jesus, that's not Jesus?
Yes, that an angel, that Satan comes as an angel of light, this form of Satan. Okay, we're just using the biblical.
I don't know what to say to these Mormons. They have my phone number. They're calling me every other day, and like I don't know what to say to them.
Give them a tarot reading; they'll never come back. No, but here's the thing though, and here's the part about this, because we can make fun of them, but what we have to remember is the leaders of these huge movements often had their moment with God, you know, where something came to them at 14 years old and they changed the whole course of history. But if you look at this becomes, if you look at really what they were trying to do, they were trying to go in another direction where they were in control, because, you know, what happens when kings rise, then they divide. Okay. Now, when I was looking back, I did a couple studies, and I've done this before, but I did a little upgrade here. Joseph Smith, if we look at Joseph Smith,
and I actually read, after we talked earlier, the brochure that the Mormons gave me, I did read a lot about Joseph Smith, and I was just like, really? They didn't even bring up the fact that he was 14 years old.
Right. And this Jesus that came to him was a different Jesus that was of the Bible at that time. If you want to just be technical, Jesus came to Joseph Smith as an angel, not as the Son of God. Okay, we can get into technical stuff there, but here's what really matters more than that. This was during a Neptune and Pisces transit, 14-year period. Mm-hmm. So these cults or these religions were birthed during a Neptune and Pisces transit 165 years ago, like to the day. All of these men, when I do their charts, Joseph Smith, the founder of Jehovah's Witnesses, even L. Ron Hubbard, Scientology, which is huge right now. All of them carry a very similar pattern. There's a strong Piscean theme. There's a strong Aquarius theme. And more than that, there's a strong Capricorn theme. Now, if you look into these religions, these sects of Christianity, okay, some call cults because they do have different doctrine. They're all some of the richest,
powerful people in the world.
Powerful people in this world right now. Scientology, I mean, you know, billions of dollars.
It's ridiculous. You know, it's kind of fucked up because if you know, commit yourself to, say, Scientology and you want to get out of it, you're shunned.
Yeah, they break up families. This is where it's us four no more. This is very serious stuff. But this is, even when Jesus came to this earth, the pattern or the story that was told, we can also, you know, many of us know, we can look at the story of the seasons and the cycles and the sun, you know, when it falls to the, you know, lowest point during Christmas is the time that's represented as Jesus going back down the 3 days when he disappeared and then he rose again. There's all these patterns, but there's also stories we have to face. There's actual stories that have come through.
Right.
And when you look at these other religions, there's a lot of Capricorn going on, which is a lot of money, power, Mars in Capricorn, Moon in Capricorn. We have the Aquarian, which is I am godlike. Mm-hmm. Joseph Smith became godlike because he could say he spoke to God himself. Do you see what I mean? Same with, I think it's Russell. Something Russell for Jehovah's Witnesses. It's crossed my mind here. But they all represent this period of time during Neptune and Pisces where we can also be, we can fall for a delusion or an illusion. Why do people get into cults? People say, why do people fall for this? Because they're all looking for the savior that we're all inbred to think we need.
Yeah, and we're our own saviors, and I think that's what the age of Aquarius is teaching us.
Well, that's it. As we move into the age in Aquarius, we're all on the same playing field. Okay, we're all equal. That's why all these years, this suppressive mindset of if you do these things, you're going to hell. If you're you know, you never were able to be who you are. You always had to try to be something else, dying to yourself as Jesus died to himself. But we don't really understand.
I totally hated that whole period. From when I was younger, you know, I totally get what you're saying. Like the whole age of Pisces, I wasn't down with because it just seemed cruel.
Well, and see, you're born from a younger generation. During my period of time, the love, the hippie move, everybody love each other, everybody share, everybody serve each other, wash each other's feet. That's ingrained in us. Like I am a moon in Pisces. Nothing makes me happier than to serve others. Like I play that role. It's not a role that I have to make up or hard. It's like that's a very comfortable role for me.
Yeah.
To heal somebody else, you know, to make them feel better. And so that's part of who we are. Okay. But here's what's happening. Like you said earlier, these belief systems no longer work. They no longer have their power, nor are they supposed to.
That's why a lot of, you know, older, you know, people in their 70s and 80s are, you know, they're like, oh, these damn kids, and, you know, they think the world's going to hell. No, we're embracing ourselves, and we're not trying to grab on to things to save us anymore. Mm-hmm. We are stepping up and saving ourselves.
Well, and we're being asked to because we don't forget just 97 in the 90s was Uranus in Aquarius. We
Mm-hmm.
moved through that 7-year cycle just, 21 years ago. That's not very far.
Yeah.
And that's when you guys, this younger generation, were coming out and being raised into belief that you could be responsible for your own actions.
Exactly.
That's
Yeah.
the bottom line. You want to be God, be responsible for your own actions.
Exactly.
That's it. Instead of blaming the devil, okay, blaming all of these things that we were raised to believe. I remember going through that period. I believed it because that was how I was raised, and that's
Right.
what we
And
did.
I was scared. When I was born, when I was little, when I was about 5 or 6, I was dragged to the church, and I would hear the sermon, and I would hear the preacher, and I'm homosexual, so hearing you should not lay with another man, I'm like, I didn't choose that.
Right. Well, and you
And
have to
it really
remember
fucked
that.
my head up, and then it made me kind of hostile towards the church.
Right. And you have to remember, and it's not, I'm not saying that this is, exact truth. It's just my intuitive truth is that back in those periods in the Old Testament, there was an issue of procreation. So they wanted to create. Guess what? We're overpopulated now. We
Yeah,
have no problem with procreation. That is no longer what we need that for. Does that make sense? Like if
yeah,
you just look at it practically.
yeah.
And if you look at the age of Aquarius coming, I mean, we have this huge women's movement. Now, again, I'm just talking in general, but why? Why do we have the women's movement? The reason is that women are fighting to be equal.
Yes, because the Bible basically says a woman should stay in her place, and she doesn't have a say.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that was what we were, raised in the churches. I can remember trying to get counseling, and it's like, well, you know what? You need to make sure the towels are done and the socks are washed. Try telling that to a Pisces woman. And, make sure the dinner's on the table, and then everything will be okay. And then the more you play this empathic servant role, do you know what happens? You feed the other person the power. So you get this dynamic of, this powerful person with the subservient. And if you look back at all of these religions, okay, you'll see, even Joseph Smith, you'll see a whole harem of serving women around him, young women. Pisces often rules that very dysfunctional shadow side of molestation. Remember, we're talking about shadow sides. Is the faith in Jesus bad in and of itself? Absolutely not. It's a beautiful part of our journey through this world. But when you take something so beautiful and then you really it becomes toxic when man in power gets a hold of it. And man in its power has basically whitewashed it out. This 2,000 years, we are at the end. When it says the dead in Christ will rise first, and again, this is just something that I've been thinking a lot about, and some of you will understand these scriptures that I'm throwing out there. We're at the end now. You're seeing all of the old preachers, Billy Graham, Chuck Smith, many of you will know if you're in California, these huge preachers that would go and do evangelism and fill up stadiums. You know what? They're from the Neptune and Virgo generation, and they're all passing on now. We no longer have that. You know what we have now? The preachers are the Joel Osteen, who is and nobody likes him because he's all about everybody just love each other and love Jesus and move on, He's too free-spirited. Doesn't have enough dogma, enough law. But the chains are breaking. We're no longer under that law anymore.
Yeah,
Jesus
and
tells us to look for the
because
water.
we have half the people over here, still living in the age of Pisces, and we have the newer generation, And it couldn't be any more opposite. And that's where all this conflict in the world is coming from, I believe.
Mm-hmm. Well, we're at this, you know, when we talk about a cusp, we're truly at a cusp where it's like an eclipse when the old passes and the new's coming in. And we're at this really, it's like the tower, you know, the tower.
Yeah,
It's like
falling from the tower.
exploding right now.
Yeah.
It's like the tower. We're in the tower moment where, you know, because I have, you know, it was really hard for me because astrology came to me. I was very devout in my biblical studies. And so in my mind, I believed the whole astrology was bad until I started getting these dates and times, and people kept coming in my life with the same birthdays and the same this and the same that, to where I couldn't deny it.
What drew me into astrology, you know, I lived my whole childhood and teenage life asking what is it? And it drew me into such a depression and such trauma because I couldn't believe in the church because they basically shunned me from when I was 5 years old. I understood. I wasn't stupid. I was
And how many young kids in your situation that have, you know, been totally rejected or have taken their lives, all of those things.
You have all these adults around you telling you these things, and you're like 5 years old, and you're like, that's not right. And so I spent most of my adolescence searching. And when I was about 18 or 19 years old, maybe 17, I found astrology. And I realized, oh my God, all of the people close to me so far in my life are Scorpios. Okay, red flag right there. Go to astrology. And that's what I did.
Yeah, that's what happened to me. I got the gift. There's a gift. Some people have to learn astrology. It just came to me. It was very natural, and it scared me because here now I'm thinking something's wrong with me. I spent my whole life preaching very, you know, passionately, just as passionate as I am about astrology, I am about the Bible. You know, I'm like that as a person.
Yeah.
So here all of a sudden, this whole nother way is opening up to me. And you know what it tells me? The astrology all of a sudden tells me I no longer have to live under fear and condemnation.
Right. And what did you say about astrology in the Bible? You told me earlier.
Well, the one thing we look at is that the astrologers were the ones that were the wise men. So we knew that they were, you know, very accepted back then. If you go back to a story, and I'm sorry I don't have the verses with me right now for people who want it, but there's a story in the book of Daniel. Okay. And it was the king, Nebuchadnezzar, and he was having these awful dreams. This is paraphrased, awful dreams. He was having all of these dreams that were scaring him. And he brought in all the astrologers, all the card readers, all the spiritual people of that time. And none of them could interpret his dream. None of them could do it. Even though they all played their roles, they couldn't interpret his dream. And so back in those days, Daniel was known as a young boy to be a dream interpreter. So they brought Daniel to the king, and Daniel interpreted the dream. And he told the king there's going to be 7 years of famine and 7 years of prosperity. And he used the dream because there was like these cows that were skinny for 7 years, 7 cows, and it was all the astrology. Daniel had the gift. But see, the king, before Daniel came,
Uranus, right?
He told the astrologers, if you can't interpret my dream, I'm going to kill you all. You're going to off with your heads. So they're freaking out because they can't give him the dream. So here comes Daniel, man of God, with the gift of interpretation, interprets the dream. And so the king said, you can have anything you want. Whatever you want, Daniel, you gave me peace, interpreted my dream. You know what Daniel wanted? He wanted all of the astrologers and all of the readers and all of the spiritual psychics to have their life, that they were not going to be killed. That's all he wanted, is them to have their life.
That's awesome.
So when we look at that, and then you're going to read a scripture next to that that it says, you know, astrology is not your God. You could read into all these things. Well, no, astrology is not our God.
No,
It's a tool. It's a language. In my opinion, it leaves room for an element of faith.
yeah.
And if you're an astrologer and you want to take astrology and believe in past lives and karmics and all of those things, that's your element of faith. I'm not even saying there isn't a strong foundation in all of that. But if I come into astrology, okay, I'm a California Western girl that was born in the Jesus movement. Astrology's come to me. Guess what? It's a totally different language to me.
Yeah, and you have so many options with astrology. I'm like I said, I mean, like Placidus equal all these different options with astrology. Like it's open-minded. It's not.
Well, and I've heard it said, which made sense to me, is really, you know, Vedic astrology and all these different things. They're basically languages. What language do you speak? You know what I mean? You're born speaking a certain language. So, of course, all of them have a place. And none of them are 100%. None of them take away another one. It's just,
I
we
honestly
all
think
speak
they're
different.
all right, but you have you have to understand it.
Right.
Like, say you read a Placidus, you're a Placidus person. You're going to be able to understand a Placidus chart more.
Right.
If
It'll
you're
be
a
revealed
Leo
to you.
person, you're going to be able to understand that more. I don't necessarily think either one is wrong.
Right, exactly. But see, this is another way that as astrologers, we can get into that religious mindset that we're trying to move away from.
Yes.
I mean, I learned astrology by reading animal charts, my horses. That's how I learned astrology. I put their birth dates in, and all of a sudden it became, I worked with horses my whole life, and all of a sudden I saw something in that chart that was, I knew my horses so well. So who's going to teach me that? That was just a search that I had.
You are going to.
Anyone going to tell me I'm wrong? Because it opened up to me a whole, you know, new relationship with my animals.
Yeah.
Now, maybe nobody else cares about that topic. They don't have to. They might specialize in something else. But see, that's a perfect situation when we look at Daniel in the Old Testament. He was given the gift of interpretation of dreams. Now, one astrologer, like I said, I might have the gift of animal reading. You might have the gift of, you know, working with people who've been through this trauma. You see into that world. Now, if they called me to see that trauma, I wouldn't be able to do it. You would be the Daniel of the day.
Yeah.
You see what I mean? So just because, you know, in that particular case, Daniel was a God-fearing man. And yet he had the gift of interpretation, and he spared all of their lives. He valued the astrologers. He was saying, you don't need to throw them out. They just didn't have what I had. I was given that gift. So that's another reason why we can't be envious of each other or jealous of each other or try to take each other down.
And astrology has, I hate to say it, but astrology in a way has gone down a wrong path in certain you know, circumstances. People are, you know, labeling certain signs as to do with you know, like a Pisces is going to do this, or a Aries is obviously going to do this. No, that's not the case. You have your own chart. You could be an Aries and be the most sympathetic, slow moving. You know, it depends on your chart. And people that are getting into astrology, they're using that religious method to interpret it, and
Yeah, I
that's
think,
where we're going off course.
Yeah. Well, and I think if we look back at the last, even 10 years of our community, astrological community, it's kind of like before you can write a paragraph, you have to know the ABCs.
Yeah.
So in a good way, just understanding the signs, bad and good, and the funny part, even Alyssa coming in with making fun of all the signs. And at that time, we needed that. We needed to laugh at each other.
Yeah,
So
and
we could quit being so hard.
that's what pulled me in. Alyssa pulled me in from laughing at it. And
Oh, her Virgo that day, I never even heard anybody talk about me like that. And even though had learned astrology, having somebody be able to make fun of it, do you know how liberating that was for me at that time?
oh my God, like I watched all of her videos over and over. I showed everybody I knew,
We all did.
watch this video. You have to watch this video. It's funny as hell. And it would, in a way, pull people into astrology because it's true.
Well, and that's when you get into this situation like we've been in the religious mindset, we're all, the basic concept is don't be who you are, try to be like, let's just, obviously Jesus. We're talking about this topic, it's kind of like what would Jesus do? And my whole life it's about reflecting Jesus to others. That was for that time. But
Yeah.
here's the problem. We are very unique individuals and we were killing that part of ourselves. And no longer we're all judging each other. And what astrology did for me was be able to say, oh my gosh, all these years that I've been trying to kill this part of me, that it actually is the most beautiful thing God has given me.
Me too.
And I didn't know that
Actually,
until I understood my chart.
I think, like we were talking about earlier, I believe we were blessed with the language of astrology, and I have friends that are they see us and they're like, what are you on to that I'm not getting? And I'll even try to teach them. I'll be like, okay, so you're going to want to start here. You're going to want to start at a beginning point because it's a very deep subject and it never works. They're always like, I don't get it. And I'm like, you have to understand, you have to put in the effort of learning what astrology means to you. You have to understand the language.
Well, and here's the thing. Back in, even 20 years ago, before YouTube and the internet really exploded on the scene, you would have to travel far and wide to find one good old astrologer.
Right.
Stephen Forrest and all of those astrologers that we see that now are in their 70s and 80s. That's the phase right now we're learning from. But they're like the old gurus. The new community of astrology is so different because you can go on the internet. You don't have to even write out your whole chart. You don't have to resurrect your chart. You go to a calculator.
And
you know what I mean? Back in those days, astrologers had to know how to do everything to you know what I mean, to create the actual wheel.
And there's so many different languages of astrology. I mean, I started with Placidus, and then I was convinced to learn equal, and I was like, wow, equal is a lot more understandable to me. And then, Christopher Witecki taught me the 11 steps of serious joy that he created.
Right.
And, the numbers or the degrees of your planets. And it blew my mind. I was like, oh my God, this is so accurate. But there are so many people that don't know his method. And I know that method. And when I try to talk with other astrologers, they're kind of like, what? But it makes perfect sense to me. So there's so many different languages of astrology.
And that's another perfect example. Chris was given this gift to be able to see the degrees and see that part of astrology and to try to teach others that.
Yeah.
It's something he, you know, received. And so, like for me, I had to go into a deep study of religion because I had to have the answers, because I thought I knew all the answers and I was trying to live that life. And towards, you know, when I went through we're about 42 to 50, you go through Uranus opposing Uranus transit. Okay, because Uranus takes 84 years. So your first Uranus return will be at 84 years old, but your halfway point's about 42. So it's like everything you've ever believed up to 42 gets blown out of the water, and you're standing there and you don't know what even happened. And that's why a lot of people have their midlife crisis during that time, and everything in your life just all of a sudden it doesn't have the hold on you. You don't know what happened. Yeah. And you start this new search. And so for me, astrology came to me, but I had to hide it from all my friends and family and people that I knew for so long, because if I even said I was an astrologer,
you're crazy.
They wouldn't, I'd have no credibility.
Right.
And so I ended up finding this whole other world and community through YouTube that was like, oh my gosh, there's other people that get this.
Mm-hmm.
I had no idea how incredible it was and how many people had their, you know, it's like perspective of it, you know?
Yeah.
So, you know, that's, I guess really the main point is we could go on to a lot of topics about religion.
This can get really deep.
Oh, it's fun. And we will. If people have questions and they want us to go in, or I have a lot, so much more to share. I'm just skimming the surface.
Yeah, I want people to comment on this video and give their perspective of what they believe in, because like I said, there's so many different languages of astrology, and yeah, I mean, it's crazy. But if it resonates with you, it resonates with you, and you were given that gift from spirit, and there's just so many different languages, and it resonates with you, and you believe in that, and if you can understand it, you get the truth.
Yeah. But the reason why it's being so revealed to so many now is as we move into the new age of Aquarius, astrology is Aquarian. It's the language of the Aquarian. It's that high vibe language.
Right.
It's just now being able to be, you know, we're just now being able to learn. We're the first wave of people, the last 10 years of astrology community. You know, look back at all of us and all of our Google Hangouts and all of our discussions. That's history making.
Yeah.
All the new astrologers coming in are going to be speaking ABCs for a while, and new people will need ABCs. We're now speaking, you know, very fluently this language, and we can dive into deeper subjects. And so we're the first wave. But the reason why is astrology, like I said before, it makes everything on the same level. So my mistakes, the places where I've went, quote unquote, the wrong way, was an astrological movement.
Right.
You don't have to.
It was meant to happen.
Anymore. For everything I've ever done, I could not live under the condemnation of religion anymore, as much as I tried to be in it. And astrology free.
It's not right. It's outdated. It's just not right anymore.
Well, I think as a human race, we often do need some type of rules, or we might all kill each other, or we might all, who knows what will happen. But I think as we move into the future, we're trusting ourselves more. We have to, taking accountability for ourselves. And, you know, as we speak right now, life will never be the same as it is right now, because of the patterns we've just moved through. Astrologers are talking about it, gets very involved, but the bottom line is, it's as if the veil to a whole new world is just opened up to us. And those that are still hanging on to the dogma and to the control and to the judgment, you know what? they're going to get left behind.
They are.
They're going to really, really struggle. And I'm not saying for anyone to change their belief systems. What I'm saying is to be able to love yourself is
open your mind, at least.
Clear your mind and ask yourselves, I mean, when you get into a church at a very young age, or if you come into a church setting, like we've talked about all of these religions, there's a very strong love bombing process. And then what begins to happen is slowly but surely, every one of your thoughts begins to change into this new way of thinking, quote unquote, a brainwashing process.
Yes.
And then after you've received all of that, they expect you to get to work. And so now you become a servant, a service member in the church, which is, you know, is part of the process. But as you become lower and lower and lower as a servant, the staff or the top crew of the church are becoming stronger and stronger. It's just this whole dynamic which becomes power, the servant, you know what I mean? And then we have this king type mentality. We're the only ones, and you guys are all down here because you're not as spiritual as we are. We can read the Bible to you, but you can't read it yourself.
Yeah.
You need us through your own relationship with God. If you don't go to church, you are backsliding in your life. Greatest church I've ever had is on the back of my horse, right down the road. I want to tell you one more really interesting thing, though, just kind of on a quiz topic. I was studying, I was looking, L. Ron Hubbard, many of you guys know, is the founder of Scientology. And right now, Scientology, go on YouTube, it's like big, huge controversies. All these things are coming out. This man was actually a science fiction writer. He was a writer, and he wrote many, many, many books. And so this religion was actually based on his science fiction ideas. And the interesting thing, when I looked at his birthday, he was born March 13th, 1911. March 13th, 1911. And when I looked at other things that happened on that day, the discovery of Uranus was discovered on the same day that he was born.
Wow.
Church of Scientology, the science. Now, don't forget, just because it may have been rooted in a good concept of being able to, you know, basically what they do is they have you constantly auditing every thought you have, so that you clear yourself from any possible negative thought you could ever have. Unfortunately, though, in doing that, though, you become very vulnerable to them controlling you. You have no thoughts left.
It's fucked up, because once you're committed to it, if you decide to leave and find something else, oh, you're fucked. You're shunned. You're a nobody.
But if you look at the basic foundation of that church, of that families don't mean it, you know, the same thing. And, you know, like we have family now, they have all these concepts that are very Uranian. He was born on the day that planet was discovered. So,
wow.
I
did not know that.
Yeah, I just found that out today. Actually, I was going back over my notes, and I did some other things, and I said, what other things happened this day? I couldn't believe it. But right now,
that's ironic.
But right now, because Pluto is in Capricorn, if you look at the foundation of these churches, that all these men had Mars in Capricorn, Moon in Capricorn, born in Neptune in Capricorn, really strong. Pluto's blowing them all out of the water now.
So I got a question. Uranus is creeping up towards Pluto. What do you think about that?
Oh my gosh. Well, what we're dealing with right now, Pluto is dealing with, is the legalistic life that we've all been entrapped in. What I'm talking about now, this mindset that you have to be in this almost mob-like, cult-like mentality where you're believing in a leader like Jesus. They become your Jesus on earth kind of thing.
Did I say Uranus or I meant Saturn. Did I say Saturn?
Oh, Saturn going into, okay. Well, yeah, Pluto will be in Aquarius next as well in a few years. So, yeah.
Yeah,
Gosh, well,
I'm
I think
worried
we're
about
gonna, you know, Saturn likes to come and, you know, we could get a good slap on the hand or we get a wake-up call, and I think the internet will get a huge wake-up call. All of us with our businesses on the internet and all of these things and our belief system, astrology, is gonna get, you know, it's gonna weed out.
I
It's
think
gonna
people
weed
are
out
going
the
to
things that
are
aren't.
going to be forced to evolve, whether
Mhm.
they like it or not.
Exactly. And we're going to be, I think Aquarius, what Saturn and Aquarius is going to do is it's going to search our hearts. So if you're out there in the healing community, your heart's going to be searched. Are you in it just for the money? Do you really want to help the universe? You know, Aquarius is all about this tribal mentality, love and peace, and money comes later kind of thing, you know? Money just, we all share, we barter, and everything's great, you know? But, you know, I think a lot of, you know, everybody who's out there on the internet, in the public eye, I mean, you know, many ways, but let's just take our communities, YouTube, all of those things, Facebook, all that stuff, it's already all being questioned. It's already all being monitored.
I feel like there's something coming, especially particularly with Facebook. How long can it actually last? I think something's coming.
Well, definitely. You can feel it. It's just lost its whole, you know, because really when you think of Facebook, it was really created for us all to go, look who I am, look at me. I'm
Right.
here too on this universe.
Look what I'm doing.
Look what I'm doing.
Look at my
But
food. Look at my
what
house.
is Aquarius though? Aquarius is all about look at me, look what I'm doing.
Right.
Like in a way of this is my little kingdom world. You want to come in my world and I'll come in your world.
Right.
Do you see what I mean? But when it becomes narcissistic, there's the opposition,
There's
Leo.
a lot of people becoming, I think, unknowingly narcissistic. I don't even think they know they're narcissistic. And
It
it's just,
brings it out.
yeah, it's just becoming a thing.
Yeah, and I'm
So,
not trying to overuse that word. I am kind of using that word as an overall word to describe a mentality. Obviously, there's a true malignant type of personality disorder, but there's a narcissistic energy, if that
yeah,
makes sense. And then there's the empath who's like hiding in the corners, like, you know, we
right.
all have to stand up. We have to equalize the power.
Yeah.
And so, you know, back in this whole religious time of being in these churches, it was all about being a servant where you had no belief. You couldn't stand up. You couldn't speak the truth. I
Yeah.
spent many, many years speaking the Christianese and knowing what everybody wanted me to say. And then, you know, going home and crying because my heart was struggling with it so much. But I couldn't tell anybody. And then it got to the point, if you go to your friends for prayer, then it was kind of like, oh, what's going on with so-and-so? So then you have this prayer no longer is sacred when people are talking about you, when you're sharing your heart, because now they know the depth of your heart.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I know I'm getting
And I think we're entering a period where we can have hope for this. We can have hope that Facebook is going to be exploited, and the truth is going to be exploited. You already have people deactivating their accounts, uh, just over it.
Well, it's like MySpace. That's just done. Facebook will go through its phase. Something new will take its place.
And
Something
honestly,
new, bigger and better, and then it'll take.
I like MySpace a lot better because you could actually share. You could put music on your page, like your favorite song, and you could write blogs. But Facebook is more of, look at my new couch.
Mhm.
Look at my plant. Like,
Right. Look what I'm eating. Look at my toes in the sand at the beach.
yeah,
How many toes I've seen.
look how
on the
great my life is.
No, I mean, but what we have to remember though is we don't want to look at the past or the cycles or the all of these times as anything necessarily bad. It's just that there's a shadow side of everything. And so when I talk about these more dogmatic religions that really brainwash people and, you know, the Jim Jones, everybody drinks the Kool-Aid. I mean, those are real Piscean cycles. And we're moving out of that age now where people aren't going to let other people tell them nothing. It's kind of like, I know this is going to sound strange, but I was telling my friend today, because it's like, you know, you spend so many years trying to make everybody okay and be, you know, at least in my generation, you know, and it's kind of like all of a sudden I realized, you know what? I've got my fuck you back. You know what that means? Fuck you. Fuck you and you and you and you. How about that? When you get your fuck you back, then you get yourself back. But see, back then I wouldn't have even been able to say to get my fuck you back. Now I'm like, I got my fuck you back.
Mm-hmm.
And when you can say that, basically what that means is I'm going to work this journey out by myself, right, wrong, or indifferent.
I'm going to finally be truthful. That's that's the basis of it. I'm going to be true. And when you can be true, you can go home and be like, hell yes. Like, I myself, I feel good.
Yeah, and people respect you for that, you know? And it's like,
and I've always been like that. Me personally, I've always been like that. And I'll be honest, like a lot of people on the internet, you know, I like to think of myself as a YouTube star, but when you look at my views and my subscribers, it's not very many. It's because I'm fucking real, and people don't like that. They don't.
But see, that's going to become more and more needed and wanted. You'll be more and more drawn to the real people and see through the facade of others. See the ones that are just counting the money behind the scenes. Yeah, they can come out and do a great show, but you know, you asked what Saturn Aquarius is going to do. It's going to check everybody's heart and bring your intentions and your motivations out, whether you like it or not. So it's time for us to get right, and like you said, be real to yourself. Right. And, you know, it's funny because the other thought I had was when you think of John the Baptist, we'll go back to the Bible a minute. He was, you know, John the Baptist was the one that was basically calling out and letting people know Jesus was coming. He was preparing the way for Jesus. But if you look at his life, he was out there eating locusts. He was living in the desert. He had no home. He was, you know, wearing fur or whatever just to be warm. He was living in the real world. He wasn't eating meat because he wanted to be high vibrational. He was fasting so he could stay on this high spiritual level. That's the age of Aquarius. John the Baptist is the perfect example of Aquarius, the water bearer as well. So, you know, that's what we're moving into. Look around you. We're going back to making our own gardens, going back to herbs, going back to our own medicine, going back to not wanting to eat meat because it's just not good anymore in our bodies. Our bodies aren't handling it anymore. You know what I mean? We don't necessarily need to be out there in big, huge mass groups. Right. We can have small tribes. So those are the changes, I think, on a mundane level, you're going to see and continue to see as we move into this new age.
Yes, and I just want to point out one thing before we end our video. I want to point out that I just want to let everybody know, pay attention to the media, pay attention, and follow your heart and what feelings you get, what you're receiving into your heart when you hear media stuff. That the latest, what was it, the Hamilton, is that what you call it? Where the Native American and the kids with the Make America Great Again hats. they were all wrong in that situation. And honestly, I think it was staged.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of button pushing right now. All of our buttons are so pressed that we don't know which way we're even going. And you're right. That's why never before in history is it more important to be, to really be able to trust your own intuition
Take a
and
step
your own
back.
thoughts.
Take a step back and look at it.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't look right, look away.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you'll hear the language and you'll hear it in your soul. And we can trust that now. We don't have to trust our intuition into the hands of anyone else, questioning ourselves. Just trust it, sit on it, back up. You know, you don't have to get in the hype. That's very mob and cult-like mentality.
Yes.
Even if you get extremely political, it's that same cult-like mentality. So we're not going that way anymore. If you
We're
want
so smarter in this day and age, and I believe people need to step up.
mm-hmm. That's what we're doing right now. Just two people stepping up.
All right. So, well, do we want to talk about anything else? Or I think we're done.
I think we're good for tonight. We're going to continue these topics. If those of you guys who are enjoying them, or if you have any other topics you want us to talk about, right, or questions, we will eventually.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Please leave comments and let us know.
We need your support.
Yeah, yeah. And let us know what you want to hear about, and we'll take that into consideration, because me and Chrystal are like when we talk about subjects. So please let us know if you want to hear about a certain subject. And thank you so much, Chrystal.
You're so welcome.
This was a great conversation. I think a lot of people will get a lot out of this. So
yeah, I appreciate you letting me talk about it. And remember, you guys, think for yourselves. I'm just bringing up concepts. You guys do your own research, and we'd love to hear what you have to say about it too. So
yeah, leave a comment down below. Subscribe to me and subscribe to Chrystal. She's the Cowgirl Astrologer. She's not hard to find. So yeah. Well, thank you, Chrystal.
You're so welcome. I look forward to our next talk.
Yes. All right.
All right. Talk later. Bye.
Bye.